The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the dark void between three star systems. It was bigger than any city on Earth, with towers that stretched for miles and docking bays that could hold 1,000 ships. This was where the Galactic Council met to decide the fate of entire worlds. Commander Jake Martinez stood at the viewing window of the human ship Pioneer, watching the station grow larger as they approached. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything around him. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Brooks was checking her notes for the 10th time that morning. She was nervous, which was normal for someone about to meet alien species for the first time. "Remember what we discussed," Jake said without turning around. "We watch, we listen, we learn. We don't make any sudden moves or demands." Captain Ryan Wells nodded from his position near the door. He was younger than Jake, with the kind of build that came from years of military training. His eyes never stopped moving, always checking exits and potential threats. The briefing said the Krellans run most of the council meetings. They're the ones we need to be careful around. Lisa looked up from her tablet. According to the data we received, they're nearly 9 feet tall and covered in natural armor. They've conquered 17 different star systems through military force alone. Their entire culture is built around physical strength and dominance. And they think we're weak because we ask to join peacefully instead of conquering our way in, Ryan added. This could get interesting. The docking process took 2 hours. When the airlocks finally opened, they were greeted by a small group of aliens who looked like walking crystals. These were the Zephyrians, one of the older members of the council. Their leader spoke through a translation device that made his voice sound like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Crystal Singer Veltar. We will escort you to the council chambers where the other species await your arrival." Jake stepped forward and offered a slight bow. "Thank you for your hospitality. We're honored to be here." The walk through the station took nearly 30 minutes. The corridors were huge, built to accommodate species of all sizes. Lisa couldn't help but stare at the different alien races they passed. Some looked like giant insects, others like living metal, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy contained in glass suits. But it was the Krellans that caught everyone's attention. They stood at least 9 feet tall, with thick gray skin that looked like armor plating. Their faces were angular and predatory, with yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the artificial light. When they walked, the floor vibrated slightly under their weight. "Those are some big boys," Ryan whispered to Jake as a group of Krellan warriors passed them in the hallway. "Size isn't everything," Jake replied quietly. "Remember that." The council chambers were enormous, with seating arranged in a semicircle that could hold thousands of representatives. At the front sat the most important species, those with the most power and influence. The Krellans occupied the center positions, their massive forms making the chairs look like toys. Crystal Singer Veltar led them to the very back of the chamber, to a small section with simple metal chairs. "These are your assigned seats," explained through his translator. "New species traditionally begin here until they prove their worth to the council." Lisa frowned. "Prove our worth? What does that mean exactly?" Before Veltar could answer, a booming voice echoed through the chamber. "It means you start where all weak races start, at the bottom." Everyone turned to see a massive Krellan approaching them. This one was even larger than the others, with scars covering his armor-like skin and wearing what looked like military medals across his chest, his yellow eyes fixed on Jake with obvious disdain. "I am War Chief Vexathera, Supreme Commander of the Krellan War Fleet and current leader of the Galactic Council. You are the humans, yes? The ones who come seeking membership through words instead of conquest?" Jake stepped forward calmly, showing no sign of being intimidated by the alien's massive size. "That's correct. I'm Commander Jake Martinez, representing Earth and humanity. We believe in diplomacy over warfare." Vexathera let out a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like a growling engine. "Diplomacy. How quaint. Tell me, Commander Martinez, how many worlds has your species conquered?" "None," Jake replied simply. "How many enemy fleets have you destroyed in glorious battle?" We've had conflicts, but we prefer to resolve them peacefully when possible. The war chief's eyes narrowed. And you think this makes you worthy to sit among warriors and conquerors? You think pretty words and peaceful intentions give you the right to help decide the fate of the galaxy? Other aliens in the chamber had stopped their conversations to watch this exchange. Lisa could feel hundreds of alien eyes focused on them, waiting to see how the humans would respond to the challenge. Jake remained calm. We think our perspective might be valuable. Sometimes the best solutions don't involve violence. Vexathara turned to address the entire chamber, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. The humans wish to join our council based on peaceful intentions and diplomatic skills. They have conquered no worlds, destroyed no enemies, proven no strength. Yet they ask to help govern a galaxy where only the strong survive. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some species seemed amused. Others appeared confused, and a few looked almost sympathetic to the humans' position. The war chief turned back to Jake. Very well, humans. We will give you a chance to prove your worth. In 1 month, we will hold the trials of strength. Each species will demonstrate their power, their abilities, their right to exist in this galaxy. Physical strength, combat skills, military might, all will be tested and judged. He leaned down closer to Jake, his massive form casting a shadow over the human commander. If you can prove you belong here, you may stay. If not, you will return to your little blue world and never darken our space again. Do you accept these terms? Jake looked back at his team. Lisa was pale but determined, while Ryan had the focused look of a soldier preparing for battle. Around them, the other species watched with interest, clearly expecting the humans to either refuse the challenge or embarrass themselves trying. We accept, Jake said clearly. Vexathara straightened up, looking pleased. Excellent. You may observe the other species' demonstrations over the coming weeks. Learn what real power looks like. Perhaps it will help you understand why your kind belongs in the back rows. As the war chief walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber, Jake and his team took their seats in the back section. The chairs were uncomfortable and the view wasn't great, but Jake seemed perfectly content with their placement. This doesn't feel like a fair fight, Lisa whispered. Ryan was already studying the layout of the chamber, noting exits and security positions. Fair fights are for sports, he said quietly. This is something else entirely. Jake settled into his chair and smiled slightly. Don't worry. Sometimes the best seat in the house is the one everyone else overlooks. We'll watch, we'll learn, and when the time comes, we'll show them exactly what humans are capable of. The council session began, with various species presenting reports and discussing galactic affairs. But Jake's attention wasn't on the speakers, at the front of the chamber. Instead, he was watching everything else, taking note of how different species interacted, their body language, their reactions to various topics. From the back of the room, he could see everything. The next morning, Jake and his team watched as the first species began their demonstration in the great arena beneath the council chambers. The arena was massive, with walls that stretched up for hundreds of feet and a floor made of some kind of metal that could reshape itself for different challenges. The Krellans went first naturally. War Chief Vexathara stood in the center of the arena wearing minimal armor, his gray skin gleaming under the bright lights. Around him, 6 smaller Krellan warriors took fighting positions. Observe and learn, weak ones. Vexathara called up to the viewing areas where all the species sat watching. His voice echoed through the arena without any help from speakers. This is what true strength looks like. What followed was barely a fight. The war chief moved with surprising speed for something so large, his massive fists striking with enough force to dent the metal floor. The 6 warriors attacking him might as well have been children. Within 3 minutes, all 6 were lying unconscious on the arena floor while Vexathara barely seemed out of breath. Lisa watched through her binoculars, taking notes on a small tablet. Did you see how fast he moved? The acceleration and deceleration patterns suggest incredible muscle control. Ryan was focused on different details. Watch his footwork. He telegraphs his moves about half a second before he strikes. and he favors his right side when turning. Those scars on his left shoulder probably limit his range of motion. Jake said nothing, but his eyes never left the arena floor. He was watching everything, learning, memorizing. Next came the strength demonstration. The arena floor reshaped itself into a series of massive stone blocks, each one weighing several tons according to the announcer. Vexithera approached the largest block, wrapped his arms around it, and lifted it over his head with what appeared to be minimal effort. The crowd of aliens cheered and roared their approval. "Show off," muttered Pete Johnson, one of the human maintenance workers who had been assigned to help with equipment during the demonstrations. He was a short, stocky man with calloused hands and the kind of practical intelligence that came from fixing broken things for a living. "Shh," Jake warned quietly. "We're here to observe." Over the following days, species after species took their turn in the arena. The crystal-like Zephyrians demonstrated their ability to manipulate gravity, making themselves float and causing small objects to dance in the air around them. Their leader, crystal singer Veltar, created a beautiful display of spinning rocks and floating water that formed complex patterns in the air. The aquatic Delphians came next, their fish-like bodies requiring special water-filled suits to survive in the arena's atmosphere. They showed their mastery over electromagnetic fields, creating lightning that danced between their webbed fingers and causing metal objects to move without touching them. Amy Clark, the human security officer assigned to their delegation, watched the Delphians with particular interest. She was a quiet woman with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Their electrical control is impressive, but it requires direct line of sight. Block their view and you block their power." Ryan nodded, making a note on his tablet. "And they need those water suits to survive. Puncture the suit, end the threat." Each demonstration followed the same pattern. The species would show off their greatest strengths, their most impressive abilities, their weapons and warriors. The crowd would cheer, the judges would make notes, and rankings would be discussed. The humans watched everything from their seats in the back. They asked few questions, made no challenges, and seemed almost bored by the displays of power. This attitude began to irritate the other species. "Why don't your people seem impressed?" asked Healer Zixandra, a representative of the plant-like Verdani species. She had approached Jake during a break between demonstrations, her vine-like appendages curling with curiosity. Jake looked up from the technical manual he was reading about station operations. "Oh, we're very impressed. All of these abilities are remarkable. But you don't seem excited or worried about competing against such powers." "Should we be worried?" Jake asked calmly. The plant woman rustled her leaves in what might have been confusion. "The Krellans alone could crush your entire delegation without effort. Don't you fear for your survival?" "Fear doesn't help much in situations like this," Jake replied. "Preparation does." Meanwhile, Danny Lee, the human engineer, had been making friends with some of the station's maintenance staff. Danny was young, barely out of college, with an easy smile and a talent for making people comfortable around him. The alien workers seemed to enjoy having someone who was interested in the technical aspects of keeping such a massive station running. "The power distribution system is fascinating," Danny said to a group of Zephyrian technicians during lunch. "How do you handle surges when multiple species are using different energy requirements?" As the technicians explained their systems, Danny asked innocent questions about backup protocols, emergency shutdowns, and security measures. To the aliens, it seemed like natural curiosity from a young engineer. But Danny was memorizing every detail. Amy had made similar connections with the security personnel. As a fellow security officer, she found common ground with the various aliens responsible for station safety. They shared stories about difficult situations, discussed crowd control techniques, and compared different approaches to threat assessment. "Your species has an interesting perspective on security," commented Officer Krelmus, a beetle-like alien with compound eyes. "Most races focus on strength-based solutions. Sometimes the best security is the kind nobody notices," Amy replied, helping herself to some of the strange alien food in the cafeteria. "Prevention is better than reaction." Pete Johnson spent his time in the lower levels of the station, working alongside maintenance crews to repair and upgrade systems. The work was familiar to him, even with alien technology, and the other workers appreciated having an extra pair of skilled hands. "You humans work differently than most species," observed a Delphian technician named Splash of Starlight. "Others see maintenance as beneath them, but you seem to understand its importance." Pete smiled as he recalibrated a water recycling system. "Everything works better when the basics are solid. You can have the fanciest weapons in the galaxy, but if your life support fails, you're still dead." Dr. Lisa Brooks spent her time in the station's vast library, researching the history and psychology of every species in the Council. She read about their wars, their cultures, their fears and motivations. What she learned was troubling. "Jake," she said one evening as they sat in their modest quarters, "I've been studying the psychological profiles of the different species. Almost every one of them has a history of either being predators or prey. They think in terms of dominance hierarchies and submission displays." "And humans?" Jake asked. "We're different. We evolved as pack hunters and tool users. We don't just think about individual strength or submission. We think about cooperation, adaptation, and using our environment to our advantage." Ryan looked up from cleaning his sidearm. "Which means they're not going to understand our approach until it's too late." As the weeks passed, more species demonstrated their abilities. The metal-bodied ferrets showed their ability to reshape their own bodies into different tools and weapons. The energy beings called luminants displayed control over light and heat that could blind enemies or melt through armor. Each demonstration was impressive in its own way, but they all followed the same basic pattern: raw power, individual ability, direct confrontation. The humans continued to watch from the back, taking notes, asking quiet questions, and learning everything they could about their potential opponents. They made no demands for better seating, issued no challenges, and showed no signs of the typical pre-competition aggression that other species displayed. This behavior puzzled and increasingly annoyed the other council members. "The humans seem confident for such a weak species," War Chief Vexthera commented to his subordinates. "Perhaps they have hidden weapons or abilities they haven't revealed. Or perhaps they're simply too stupid to understand their situation," suggested Sub-Commander Mordak, a younger Krellin with fresh scars across his face and ambition burning in his yellow eyes. As the final week of demonstrations approached, tension began to build throughout the station. Species that had been friendly with each other started viewing one another as competition. Alliances formed and dissolved daily as the rankings shifted based on each new display of power. Through it all, the humans remained calm, sitting in their back row seats watching everything with quiet patience. The demonstration period was supposed to end peacefully in 3 days. Instead, everything went wrong at 347 station time, when the emergency alarms began screaming through the corridors of Harmony's Edge. Jake woke instantly in his small quarters, years of military training making him alert before the second alarm tone finished. Through the thin walls, he could hear shouts and running footsteps in the hallways outside. The lights flickered, then went out completely, leaving only the red emergency lighting casting everything in an eerie glow. "Jake, you there?" Ryan's voice came through their communication device, already sounding like he was moving fast. "I'm here. What's the situation?" "Krellin military units have seized control of the main control center and the docking bays. They're broadcasting some kind of message about proving strength through actual combat, instead of demonstrations." Jake was already pulling on his clothes and checking his equipment. "Where are Lisa and the others?" "Amy's with me in Corridor 7. Pete and Danny were working late in the engineering section. Lisa was in the library. Get to Lisa first. I'll handle the others." Jake stepped out into the hallway and immediately noticed something that would have escaped most people's attention. The emergency lighting pattern was wrong. Instead of the steady red glow that was supposed to guide people to safety exits, the lights were flashing in a specific sequence. It was Morse code, and it was coming from the maintenance levels where Pete and Danny had been working. "Station. Compromised. Multiple hostiles. Avoid main corridors. Follow maintenance paths. Stay low." Jake smiled grimly. His people were already adapting. The corridors were filled with panicking aliens running in different directions. Most species were used to straightforward conflicts where strength determined the winner. This kind of coordinated takeover confused them, and their fear made them easy to spot from a distance. Jake moved differently. He stayed close to the walls, used shadows for cover, and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had been in similar situations before. When he needed to cross open areas, he timed his movements to coincide with groups of panicking aliens, using them as cover. It took him 20 minutes to reach the library through maintenance passages that Pete had mapped out during his weeks of repair work. He found Lisa hiding behind an overturned table with 3 other alien researchers, all of them looking terrified. "Lisa," he called softly. "Time to go." She looked up, relief flooding her face. "Jake, what's happening?" Krellin Ku. "Sub-Commander, Mordak is making his move." Jake helped her gather her research materials. "We need to get to the others." "But the exits are blocked." Those crystal beings said the Krellins have soldiers at every major intersection. Jake tapped his earpiece. "Pete, you reading me?" "Loud and clear, boss. Danny and I are in the main engineering section. We've got company, but they don't know we're here yet. Status report. 12 Krellin soldiers in the control room. They've locked down all the main systems, but they made a mistake. They're using the station's own security protocols against everyone else, but they don't understand how the backup systems work." "Meaning?" Danny's voice came through the comm. "Meaning I can turn their own security systems into weapons if you give me 5 minutes and some cover." "What do you need?" "Amy's security clearance codes and a distraction big enough to keep their attention off the engineering sections." Jake looked around the library at the cowering aliens. "Can you give me station-wide communications?" "Already working on it." While Danny worked his technical magic, Jake helped Lisa gather intelligence on their opponents. She had been researching Krellin military tactics and psychology during her time in the library. "Their weakness is their rigid command structure," she explained as they made their way through maintenance tunnels toward the engineering section. "Sub-Commander Mordak is young and ambitious. He's trying to prove himself by staging this takeover, but he's also impulsive and overconfident." "How do we use that?" "Challenge his authority. Make him come to us instead of letting him control the battlefield." When they reached the engineering section, they found Amy and Ryan had already secured the area. Amy was working with Danny to access the station's security systems, while Ryan was setting up defensive positions. "What's our tactical situation?" Jake asked. Ryan looked up from checking his weapon. 47 Krellin soldiers total spread throughout the station. They've got the main control room, the docking bays, and the council chambers. Everyone else is either hiding or trapped in their quarters. Weapons? Standard Krellin military gear. Energy rifles, personal armor, some heavy weapons. Nothing we can't handle if we're smart about it. Amy finished her work at a control panel and turned to Jake. "I've got access to the security systems. Danny's rigged the environmental controls, and Pete's been preparing some surprises in the power distribution network." "All right," Jake said, his voice taking on the tone of a military commander. "Here's what we're going to do." What happened next would have shocked any of the aliens who had spent weeks watching the passive, peaceful humans sitting quietly in the back of the council chambers. Jake's team didn't charge into battle like the other species would have. They didn't rely on superior strength or flashy powers. Instead, they became something far more dangerous, a coordinated hunting pack. Danny started by making the station's lights flicker in patterns that looked random, but were actually coded signals to any humans who might be scattered throughout the facility. Then he began systematically shutting down life support in sections controlled by the Krellins, while maintaining it in areas where innocent aliens were hiding. Pete used his knowledge of the station's infrastructure to turn the Krellins' own defenses against them. Doors that should have provided security instead became traps. Elevators stopped working. Communication systems carried false information. Amy moved through the station like a ghost, appearing just long enough to disable security, cameras, and communication equipment before vanishing back into the maintenance tunnels. The Krellins found themselves blind and deaf, unable to coordinate their forces effectively. Ryan provided overwatch, using his knowledge of Krellin movement patterns from weeks of observation to predict where their patrols would be. He didn't engage them directly. Instead, he guided them into areas where Danny's environmental traps waited. Lisa's psychological warfare was perhaps the most effective weapon of all. She used the station's communication system to broadcast carefully crafted messages that played on Krellin fears and superstitions. She made them hear sounds that weren't there, see shadows that might be enemies, and doubt their own senses. But it was Jake who delivered the killing blow to Mordak's rebellion. Instead of attacking the heavily defended control room directly, Jake simply walked into the council chambers where Mordak had set up his command post. He was alone, unarmed, and completely calm. "Sub-Commander Mordak," Jake called out as he entered the vast chamber. "I believe you wanted to see a demonstration of human capabilities." Mordak spun around, his massive form towering over Jake. "The weak human comes to surrender? Good. Perhaps you can convince the other species to submit as well." "Actually, I came to offer you a choice," Jake said, sitting down in one of the chairs in the front row instead of his usual back row seat. "You can surrender now, or you can find out why humans choose to sit in the back." Mordak laughed, the sound echoing through the empty chamber. "You think you can threaten me? One small human against a Krellin warrior?" "I'm not threatening you," Jake said calmly. "I'm offering you the chance to surrender before my people finish what you started." "Your people? What people? We've secured the entire station." Jake tapped his communication device. "Status report." Danny's voice came through clearly enough for Mordak to hear. "Engineering section secured. All Krellin forces in lower levels have been neutralized through environmental controls." Amy's voice followed. "Security grid is down. Krellin communication systems are jammed. 17 soldiers are trapped in sealed sections." Pete's voice was cheerful. "Power grid is under our control. I can shut down life support to any section of the station you want, boss." Ryan's voice was professional and calm. "Overwatch position maintained. All remaining Krellin forces are contained and monitored." Mordak's yellow eyes widened as he realized what had happened. While he had been focused on holding key positions through brute force, the humans had systematically dismantled his entire operation from within. "Impossible," he growled. "You're weaklings. You have no weapons, no strength, no warriors." Jake stood up slowly, his calm demeanor never changing. "You're right. We're not warriors in the way you understand the term. We're something else entirely." The lights in the council chamber suddenly went out, leaving only the emergency lighting. In the red glow, Jake's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We're apex predators, Mordak, and you just walked into our hunting ground." In the red emergency lighting of the council chambers, Sub-Commander Mordak looked around wildly, trying to locate Jake's voice. The human had somehow vanished into the shadows between one moment and the next. "Show yourself, coward." Mordak roared, his massive fists clenching. "Face me in honorable combat." Jake's voice came from somewhere behind him, calm and steady. "There's nothing honorable about what you've done here today, Mordak. You've threatened innocent civilians and tried to overthrow a peaceful government. That makes you a terrorist, not a warrior." Mordak spun around, but Jake was already gone, his voice now coming from a different direction entirely. "Besides, you wanted a demonstration of human capabilities. This is it. Hiding in shadows like a pest, this proves nothing except your cowardice." "Does it?" Jake asked, and now his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Tell me, Sub-Commander, how many of your soldiers are still responding to your commands?" Mordak activated his communication device, trying to contact his forces. Static filled the air, broken only by occasional fragments of panicked voices. "Section 7 is sealed. Can't breathe. The lights are... something in the vents. Moving through the walls. They're not fighting us. They're hunting us." Jake stepped out of the shadows near the front of the chamber, completely relaxed. "Your soldiers are alive, Mordak. Unconscious but alive. We could have killed them all easily, but that's not who we are." "Impossible. Krellin warriors don't fall to weaklings." "No, they don't," Jake agreed. "But they do fall to superior tactics, better preparation, and coordinated teamwork. All things you could have learned about us if you'd bothered to observe instead of assuming." Amy's voice came through Jake's communicator, audible to both men. "All Krellin forces have been neutralized. Station security is restored. No casualties, on either side." Ryan's voice followed. "War Chief Vexathera and the other council members are safe and being escorted to the chambers." Mordak's shoulders sagged as the reality of his situation became clear. How? We are the strongest race in the galaxy. We conquered 17 star systems through superior might, and that's exactly why you lost, Jake said, walking closer. You think in terms of conquest and domination. You see everything as a test of individual strength, but humans evolved differently. The main lights came back on, and Jake could see other species representatives beginning to enter the chamber. Escorted by human team members, War Chief Vexithara was among them, his yellow eyes fixed on the scene before him with something that might have been respect. Jake continued his explanation, speaking to the growing audience as much as to Mordak. Humans didn't become the dominant species on our planet because we were the strongest or fastest. We became dominant because we learned to work together, to use tools, to adapt to any environment. Dr. Lisa Brooks entered the chamber carrying her research tablets, flanked by several alien scientists who looked at her with new understanding. Every species here evolved as either predators or prey, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Your thinking is binary, fight or flight, dominate or submit, hunt or hide. Pete Johnson emerged from a maintenance hatch, wiping his hands on a rag and grinning. Humans are pack hunters, he said simply. We don't hunt alone like you're predators, and we don't just run like prey animals. We coordinate, we plan, we use everything around us as a weapon. Danny Lee appeared with a group of alien technicians, all of them looking amazed at what they had witnessed. We spent weeks learning about this station, about your capabilities, about your weaknesses. Not because we plan to attack anyone, but because that's what humans do. We observe, we learn, we adapt. War Chief Vexithara stepped forward, his massive form still intimidating but his posture somehow different. I begin to understand. You sat in the back not from weakness but from tactical positioning. Exactly, Jake said. Predators position themselves where they can see everything, where they can't be surrounded, where they control the exits. We weren't hiding in the back rows. We were choosing our battlefield. Amy Clark holstered her sidearm and looked around the chamber. Every species here showed us their greatest strengths during the demonstrations. You told us exactly how to defeat you and you didn't even realize it. Crystal Singer Veltar's translation device chimed as he spoke. The Zephyrians are curious. If humans are such effective hunters, why do you seek peace? Why not conquer, as the Krellans do? Jake looked around the chamber at all the different species representatives. Because conquest isn't survival. In the long run, cooperation works better than domination. We learned that on our own world. Lisa stepped forward, addressing the entire gathering. Human history is full of wars and conflicts, but our greatest achievements came from working together. Our cities, our technology, our exploration of space, all of it required cooperation between different groups. But you could have killed us all, Mordak said, his voice quiet now. Your people had complete control of this station. You could have eliminated every Krellan here. Yes, Jake said simply. But then what? We'd be alone in a galaxy full of species who fear and hate us. That's not the kind of future we want. War Chief Vexithara approached Jake, his massive form towering over the human commander. For a moment, tension filled the chamber as everyone wondered if the Krellan leader would attack. Instead, he slowly lowered himself to one knee, bringing his eyes level with Jake's. I have led warriors for 40 cycles, Vexithara said, his voice carrying a respect that hadn't been there before. I have conquered worlds and defeated enemies across the galaxy, but I have never seen anything like what your people did today. He stood back up, addressing the entire chamber. The humans defeated a superior force without killing a single opponent. They turned our own strength against us and made us defeat ourselves. This is not weakness. This is a kind of power we do not understand. Other species representatives began to murmur among themselves, their attitudes toward the humans clearly changing. The plant-like Verdani delegate approached Lisa with obvious curiosity. Your species thinks in ways we cannot comprehend, Healer Zixandra said. You see patterns and possibilities that escape us. Perhaps this is why you belong in our council. Jake looked around the chamber, noting how the seating arrangement suddenly seemed different. The species that had looked down on humans were now regarding them with respect, even wariness. "We don't need to sit in the front," Jake said, addressing everyone present. "We're comfortable in the back. From there, we can see everything that matters." War Chief Vexithara nodded slowly. "The seating arrangement will remain as it is, but not for the reasons we originally thought. The humans have chosen their position wisely." Sub-Commander Mordak, still standing in the center of the chamber, looked around at the faces surrounding him. "What happens to me now?" Jake considered the question seriously. "That's up to the Council to decide, but I'd recommend some time thinking about the difference between strength and wisdom." As the various species began to file out of the chamber discussing what they had witnessed, Jake and his team remained in their back row seats. The other humans settled in around him, looking tired but satisfied. "So," Ryan said, checking his equipment, "I guess we passed their test." Lisa smiled, organizing her research notes. "I don't think they'll underestimate humans again." Pete stretched in his chair and grinned. "Good thing, too. All that pretending to be harmless was getting exhausting." Danny laughed quietly. "Speak for yourself. I enjoyed showing off our technical skills." Amy just nodded, her eyes already scanning the chamber for potential security improvements. Jake leaned back in his chair and looked around the vast council chamber. From the back row, he could see every entrance, every exit, every species representative, and every potential threat or opportunity. "Perfect view," he said quietly. War Chief Vexithara, passing by on his way out, heard the comment and paused. "Commander Martinez, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Will humans always choose to sit in the back?" Jake smiled, his eyes never stopping their systematic scan of the chamber. "War Chief, we'll sit wherever we need to sit to protect our friends and watch our enemies. Today, that happens to be in the back." Vexithara nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed both respect and understanding. The galaxy is safer with humans watching from the shadows. As the chamber emptied and the lights dimmed, Jake and his team remained in their seats, quietly observing, always learning, always ready. From the back of the room, they could see everything that mattered: